Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Stella Simiyu, and I am your webinar panelist for today. We have quite an interesting topic that we'll be discussing, the future of data in Africa, privacy, trust, and digital growth. Um, just to know a bit about me, I am a consultant, a risk management consultant working across Africa. Uh, I am Kenyan born, but currently live in Uganda and have worked across the region in Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, Rwanda, all the way in West Africa as well, South Africa as well. So I'll be happy to share my insights with you. Just to let you know how this webinar will, the agenda for the webinar, I start off with just giving you an introduction of what are the foundations of privacy in Africa, just to let you know where did this discussion of privacy come from and how has it involved in our space. We'll then go on to understand digitization in Africa, some of the unique things that are happening that are changing our infrastructure, the way we manage data across Africa. We'll look at some of the legal cases that we've experienced so far, insofar as privacy is concerned, and what are some of the challenges that are coming out from those legal cases, and then we'll look at challenges and opportunities as well as the way forward. I look forward to interacting with you and also growing with you and being able to just share some ideas. So welcome to the session and looking forward. So if we start off with where did privacy come from? Privacy is older than me and you and everybody else on this webinar. It started off with ancient philosophical roots. So Aristotle, in a paper that he did quite a while back, started off on discussing the issue of public versus private life and personal sanctions. At this time, people were thinking about, certain things like even how do I construct my house and how do I have just one open room where everybody sleeps, or do I have rooms where we have a room for this, a room for that, a room for the other? So early definitions of public versus private life. Then, in an article which was written by Warren and Brandesi, he defined privacy as the right to be let alone. Now, if you remember, um, uh, if you are a fan of Princess Diana, and you remember some of the challenges she experienced with the press and photography constantly following her around. And ultimately, it actually led to her death. If you look at how she died, um, just trying to get away from the paparazzi. So when you look at privacy, the earlier definitions were looking at um, situations such as that when you come into photography and what is private life, what is public life. Then we look at issues of personal autonomy and protection from unwanted intrusions. So privacy started to be defined as if I had a house, yeah, and I had several rooms in my house. Like, for example, I had the kitchen, I had the sitting room, I had the children's bedrooms, I had my main bedroom. I could choose and say, if I had a guest, I want you only to access the living area, and I don't want you to access my children's bedrooms, my private spaces. Or I'm comfortable enough for you to access room A, room B, but not the other. So then these were the contemporary legacy ideas that then brought about data protection principles globally. Now, you may also be wondering, so where did the issue of data protection start off in Africa? So in 2014, there was the Malabo Convention, and the Malabo Convention identified the need for data privacy across Africa. And in 2023, then it came into force. Since then, we've had quite a number of countries that have signed the Malabo Convention, about 16 of them out of the 46 in Africa. So not uh, and different applications of the Malabo Convention across Africa. Then the GDPR came into force in 2016, and we began seeing that a lot of the African countries then started to look at GDPR and what GDPR had in place, the rights of data subjects, the principles, and all those other things, and start to think about, okay, how does this affect me? If I am trading with my European partners, if I'm trading with my Asian partners, how is it that I can embody the aspects of general data protection or data protection in general into my African legislation? Then we had the African Continental Free Trade Area Digital Protocol in 24, and basically in 2024, and it obliges the 54 states to establish legal and institutional frameworks for data protection. So from thinking about it, we as an African continent, we have evolved from just thinking about, the simple aspects of what data protection is, to thinking about if we want to be an economic powerhouse, if we want to keep trading with our neighbors, how then do we embody these best practices in what we do, and how do we align with international standards and also enable cooperation across the African region. Um, Now, looking at where we are, what does the current landscape of Africa look like? Out of the 54 countries in Africa, we have data protection laws with 46 out of those countries. So those include Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, all have data protection laws. Of those countries, 39 countries have standalone legislation. So what that means is that there is a Data Protection and Privacy Act in 39 of those countries. For the other remaining countries, they have embedded it, for example, in cybersecurity regulations or other regulations that they have. Now, to support the implementation of data protection frameworks of the 46 countries with data protection laws, 38 of them have supervisory authorities. So supervisory authorities are the authorities that have been set up in the different countries to be able to ensure that the data protection law is well established. So for example, Uganda will have the PDPO, the Personal Data Protection Office. In Kenya, we have the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. In Nigeria, we also have the Supervisory Authority. So in every country, there will be a supervisory authority whose responsibility it is to ensure that data protection laws are embedded and are followed in that organization. So because of this data protection laws, we've seen a lot of regional harmonization. So when I am, for example, trading in the Eastern African bloc, one of the things I will worry about is if I am trading between, say, Kenya and Uganda, and I am moving data from Kenya and Uganda, does, for example, Uganda have commensurate laws in terms of data protection? If I am trading with South Africa, does it have commensurate laws? Are they following the same standards? So the fact that we have data protection laws in 46 out of 54 countries has meant that as a continent, then we are allowing ourselves to enhance trade with a focus of growing, data transfers while ensuring that data is well managed as per the data protection laws. Now, because of the supervisory authorities, we have now in different continents and across the different African countries, we find that there is mandatory data controller registration and also data processor registration. So the supervisory authorities will mandate that you have to be registered with them to be able to interact with data. We've also seen different levels of compliance, and because of that, people are free to complain when they feel that their data has been misused to the different, supervisory authorities, and there are different procedures of how those complaints have been handled. We'll be able to see a bit of that, and there have been instances of fines issued to different players because of non-compliance with data protection laws. Now, apart from fines, there could also be, and there is, criminal liability in several of the laws across the different jurisdictions. So what that means is that right now, organizations across Africa need to be more serious about data protection, how they manage data flows across borders, and how they protect their personal identifiable information. So, looking at Africa, what does the digital landscape look like? So, just looking at what we've been able to gather, one of the things that Africa has been known for is the fintech market. So, by the amount of venture capital raised in 2023, we have raised over 1.55 billion USD. We have over 169 agreements, and those are across countries like Egypt, Kenya has about 19%, Nigeria, South Africa. So those have become leaders in terms of the fintech markets, and we've seen quite a lot of what we would call it. We've seen a few unicorns coming from Africa, people like Flutterwave, guys like M-Pesa, that have revolutionized the way that we interact as institutions. It has enabled a lot of e-commerce, a lot of digital and health growth. But with that growth, what's the other side? So usually we look at issues from the aspect of risks, but there are also opportunities. I mean, opportunities, but there are also risks that come with those opportunities. So yes, Africa is a powerhouse when it comes to fintech leadership, and this digitization has transformed the way we manage our economy, how we interact socially. Yeah, but additionally, now Africa has become a target from a cybersecurity perspective. So we've seen that between 2019 and 2025, there were over 3 billion USD financial losses brought about by phishing attacks. And we can see that the number of fraud cases, the number of cybersecurity attacks that are happening in Africa are growing across. So this could be a simple, they could be identity theft, which is, quite big. They could be phishing frauds, malwares that land on digital infrastructure. And such things tend to disrupt or erode trust. Because if I feel that by using, for example, digital money, I am exposing myself to loss of money, then I would much rather use, a physical and be able to deposit that money in someone's account. So to be able to transport myself to that person and give them the money physically. But what that does is it also erodes value, because when we have to transport ourselves from point A up till point B, it takes time, and time is money. It also costs us to be able to do that. So we lose out on the opportunities that can be gotten by just making sure that we embrace digitization. So because of this, then our priority as Africa and our priority as leaders out there needs to be, how do we safeguard um, our environment and pair digital expansion with strong governance and stakeholder trust. So, how do we make sure that when we are creating all these brilliant innovations, that people are able to say, we trust this, we know that it works, and we can be able to say that in terms of security, we've catered for the security both for the company and for me as an individual. So, looking at that, let's look at what are some of the big changes that have happened in Africa. And we'll start off with national digital ID systems. Um, in my previous life, I was working for Airtel Money, and I was in charge of compliance. And one of our biggest risks was always KYC risk. Why? Because not all jurisdictions where we were operating in had the strongest KYC infrastructure. And when you look at KYC infrastructure, it's all about making sure that when I meet Stella, and Stella gives me an identity card, and um, I use that identity card to onboard Stella to system ABC or to transact with her, then I can be assured that Stella is who she says she is. So national ID systems have been a problem across Africa, but over time, what has been happening is that there's been a lot of digitization of ID systems. Um, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Nigeria, these have been some of the things that they have done very well. So what we have now is national ID databases that different institutions from banks, insurance, SACCOs can use to verify that when it comes to KYC data, um, we can be able to trust, in addition to even fintechs. So what that has meant is that because I am able to identify somebody, which is a key tenant when, for example, I am offering you credit, I am offering you financial services, access to banking has become easier. Previously, it was so hard for somebody who, a lady in the market to be able to get a loan, even a small loan. But because of the fintech evolution, as well as things like the national ID system, then these people are able to be identified, they're able to access credit, they're able to build their businesses, they're able to, the economy is growing. So all this has been something that has grown over time. It has also impacted the issues of fraud. So what I remember when I was working in compliance is that it was so simple for you to, go to the local, here in Uganda, we call it Nasa Road, that is like downtown. And then in Kenya, we have River Road. Those are places where forgeries are done, yeah? So it was so easy for you to forge an ID, go and take a loan, and from there default on the loan, for example. But now, because there are all these national digital ID systems, then I can be able to verify and say, okay, is this a genuine ID? If it's not a genuine ID, the system flags it, and it's able to tell me this ID is not genuine. So all those have become opportunities. I'm able to minimize the frauds. I am able to include a lot of more people into the financial ecosystem. I'm able to centralize identity verification. But on the other end, what that has meant is that now we have a large database, basically, that if I was to go to, for example, NIRA here, and I just target it, I'm able to get ID data for everybody in Uganda. If I go the same way to Kenya, I just need to basically target that, and I can be able to get information for credible information that I can use again to take over people's identities and basically to cause havoc. There are also potential for government tracking and rights abuses. So taken the other way, national ID systems can be used for such things as profiling. They can be used to deny you services. So there are definitely risks in regard to that. And then this then calls for privacy and protection, and basically an inclusive thinking when it comes to design. When we look at mobile money, so mobile money has, I think Africa, in my view, is the home of mobile money. And if you go even to some of the earlier um, reports of mobile money in Africa, you'll see that we were the pioneers with systems such as M-Pesa, and this have enabled people to, out of mobile money, a lot of innovation has been built around mobile money, including being able to offer insurance, being able to offer SACCO services, being able to offer loans not just to individuals but to businesses, being able to offer payment options to different dealers and to different pay bill companies. You find that a lot of businesses have gone out of they are no longer relevant because of mobile money. Things such as check services are not used as much as they were previously because of mobile money and also because of internet banking. So a lot of opportunities have erupted from there. You can be able to, get to understand what I have, what I'm able to save, etc. But out of that, there've also been a lot of frauds. So SIM swap fraud is still a thing. Recently, I had an experience of losing my SIM swap, my SIM actually. And when I lost my SIM, I was in another country. So I lost my Kenyan SIM and I was in Uganda. Getting back my SIM card was so difficult. Why? Because of the frauds, mobile money companies have put around so many controls regarding your SIM card. Even banks have put so many controls around your SIM card. Hence the reason why, for example, if you change your SIM card, you might have to notify the bank to tell them, I've changed my SIM card. Please update application X, application Y, to be able to allow access to this new SIM card. So fraud has also evolved. I always tell guys these days it is quite unlikely that you are going to have somebody who steals from a bank or steals from any institution using a gun. Most of them are digital, yeah? There's also large volumes of KYC data held by telecoms. So the nature of mobile money is that there is the mobile money provider and there is also the telecom provider. These two institutions share data. Because of that, there's a lot of information that that is available to telecom companies, including where you live, who you talk to, who your next of kin is, the type of phone you have, which websites do you access. All this information creates a big privacy risk because there are all these data sets. When brought together, they give a lot of data about you. Um, so anything that then touches this area and gives a weakness from a data privacy perspective can minimize the gains that we've had around mobile money. So another area that is coming up and that is, changing the way we do business is smart cities. So you'd ask yourself, why do I need a smart city, or what is a smart city about? So imagine being able to wake up in the morning and choose, for example, your commute based on information which is already fed to you and said, this area has a better commute time. Things like, your air quality, maybe this area has better or air quality, or your air quality is on this area. Being able, for example, to give alerts to a certain area. So sending alerts like, there is expected flooding in your area, please move to higher ground. And all that is done because you're in a smart city. So a few African countries have started to think about how do they embed smart cities in their design. People like Rwanda have started to explore issues like smart infrastructure, Internet of Things, um, uh, creating insights that can help them to give better service delivery to their citizenry. Yeah, but this also gives you a lot of privacy risks. Uh, I was watching a YouTube just the other day, and it was talking about um, the social system that is used in um, China. And if you are blacklisted, basically you cannot get credit, you cannot be able to do anything, you cannot even get housing if you're blacklisted. So the thing about a smart city is gives you a lot of insights, allows everything to be connected from how you're buying to being able to rent in a certain area, but it also increases your surveillance risk, and it can also increase risks such as exclusion. Yeah. Um, um, Internet of Things and connected devices also introduce cybersecurity vulnerabilities at scale, because now you're not talking about if, for example, your lights are being controlled by a smart system, your lights on the street. Yeah. If I wanted to take control of, let's say, Kigali, I just need to get access to that, switch off all the lights. Already I've created a security situation. Data ownership, data governance can lead to misuse. So here you look at, for example, who owns these devices? Is there a third-party risk? Are third parties? Is it a shared model, let's say, between government and a third party? And is that third party sharing risks, or rather transferring data across borders? And if they are, what is this data being used for? Yeah. So these are just some of the issues that are coming about. We also have health digitization, and there are a number of very unique health products that have come out from different institutions. Just the other day, I was reading about surgeries that could be done. We have some remote areas in Kenya, and those surgeries can be done using robots that are controlled from the capital. In addition, you get things such as um, AI assisted diagnosis, A friend of mine was telling me that she works for a company where you just take a picture of your meal and they're able to tell you based on your meal how many calories are you eating. Yeah. And it has been customized towards Africa because Africa has a very different uh, diet than the West. So a lot of telemedicine programs are coming about, very very innovative because they are enabling inclusion for people who are far off, for people who you might not be able to attract a key surgeon in your area because your area is marginalized, but you're able to get the help that you need. In Ghana, I believe there's a program that focuses on being able to tell you, is this genuine medicine that you have bought, which is now affecting the counterfeit market. So digital health basically helps you enable faster data-driven clinical decisions. Um, Teleconsultations expand access. So just as I was saying, you might not be able to attract a neurosurgeon where you are, but you're able to get the help you need. Um, Also, as you build a database, then I can be able to know that, for example, if I go to a hospital and this particular app has all my data, then I'm able to tell you this is what happened. I went for surgery on this date. I was given this type of pill, etc., etc. So it also improves your care, improves your monitoring, improves insights, helps the public health official to be able to give you that much better um, service. But on the other end, when you come to medical data, it's what you categorize as special data, special categories of personally identifiable data. So when certain data sets which have medical data leak, it presents a high risk to a data subject, such as myself. So you could imagine communities where, for example, things like HIV/AIDS are still a thing where people face discrimination. Um, if certain data sets uh, leak and they have this sensitive data, it presents a high risk to a data subject. Additionally, um, many people in marginalized areas may not be English speaking, they might not be they might not be well educated. So then issues of consent become a problem. So I'm collecting a lot of data using these telehealth platforms. Um, and that data is being used for the good, which is treating this person, but it can also be used for a lot of other things. It can be used for research purposes without the consent of the patient. It can be used to onboard them on certain uh, things that probably they have not understood the implication, and because of that. Additionally, you will find that the aspect of telemedicine, um, you are trying to manage. So I could be in Kenya. I have developed an app that is able to help you diagnose certain illnesses, whether you're in Egypt, whether you're in Nigeria, etc. So there's a lot of cross-border. And it might be crossing borders to jurisdictions where data protection regulations are not well ingrained. So where is the data hosted and what type of governance structures do they have? Inadequate cybersecurity could also come up. Verification gaps may lead to fraud or also inaccurate medical records. And we've seen this especially during when we have insurance programs where there's been a lot of insurance fraud, yeah, where I can pretend to be somebody else in order to get medical assistance. So those are some of the challenges that are coming out. Now, apart from that, there have been, a number of government platforms So this is an example of Eswatini, who have the government in your hand platform, and it allows basically citizens to access government um, services via a mobile app and an online portal. So you're able to do civil registration, business licensing, immigration, utility uh, payments. You're able to get a death certificate, all these other things. Yeah. Um, so that generally tends to enable services. I experienced it when I was here in Uganda. So I'm a Kenyan citizen, meaning my license to drive is Kenyan, but I can drive here in Uganda. Now my license expired, so I needed to renew it. It was as simple as going to an app, paying via mobile money, and I get a renewed license. Now you can imagine before that, what I would have had to do is I would have had to um, climb a plane, spend about $500, get to Kenya, and renew my license. So a lot saved through e-government platforms. If you look at it from a different perspective, the government needs to give services to everybody, but it might not necessarily want to open offices in every town. So having a platform where people can just log in and be able to access services, bring services closer to people. So basically, that definitely improves efficiency, reduces corruption, because all of a sudden you've cut off the middleman. I don't have to pay somebody who pays somebody who pays somebody so that I can get my, let's say, even passport. Yeah. Um, because of this integration, you can trust certain things. If I am caught by the police, they can actually verify the database, is this person's driving license actually um, legit? Yeah. Data interoperability supports faster and joined up government services. So you can find, for example, the birth data, the database, passport database, um, the lands database. There's a lot of interoperability around that. Um, yeah, we reduce the need for physical visits, improve digital records, improve planning and policy decisions. And then obviously strong privacy controls can enhance citizen trust in the digital government. On the other side, obviously, this increases the security risk. Why? Because the government and all these e-government platforms are holding a lot of data. They are, which if exposed, gives a high risk to the data subjects. If, for example, they are weak consent and transparency measures. So, for example, where I am uneducated, I need help to be able to offer some certain services. I can actually do some updates on, for example, my grandmother's records on her behalf without her knowing. Yeah. So that might be a case. There could also be excessive risk because of the data sharing, because Lands is accessing my data. The passport guys are accessing my data. Maybe the judicial system is accessing my data. If there's excessive sharing of data, so there's no purpose limitation, then you can find that all these people have a lot of data about you, even more than they need. Yeah. Uh, Cloud and other cross-border compliance issues may still be there. Then digital literacy may exclude vulnerable populations, and centralized platforms attract high-impact cybersecurity issues because of a single point of failure. So let's look at a few cases now that we've understood. So we've understood the history, we've understood some of the key digital, things that are transforming Africa. Now let's look at some of the risks that we have, or rather some of the legal issues that have come about. So there was a case in Kenya, it's called the Huduma card case. So Here, what they were looking to do is digitize. They were looking actually to change the way ID, the national ID was, uh, and they wanted to come up with something called the National Integrated Identity Management System. What that was going to do is it was going to harmonize how your identity is managed by the government. That failed. Why? Because somebody went to court and and basically said that the government had not done a data protection impact assessment. What was the outcome? The High Court basically ruled that the organization must conduct a DPIA, and the rollout was halted. Yeah. So the court actually affirmed that privacy rights cannot be overwritten by digital innovation. The second case that we're going to look at is one that happened in Nigeria. This looks at cross-border. So it was the NDPC and FCCP who were jointly investigating WhatsApp. And what had happened is that WhatsApp had done an update of their privacy terms, which required users to accept broad sharing practices. And basically, the civil societies had raised concerns on the consent model. So the regulators basically found that the practices were unfair and not transparent, and they were exploitative, amounting to forced consent. Yeah. And it directed that basically compliance measures, including transparency and lawful consent and restrictions on unfair sharing, should be stopped. So you could see that even where it is a big player, the strict privacy, fairness, and consumer choice must be respected. Then we had in South Africa, this was the information regulator versus the Department of Basic Education. So what had happened is that DEB published the matric exams together with unique identifiers that could be linked back to individual learners. So you could know Stella scored this, X scored that, yeah? So the regulator found DBE to be in breach of their act, which is called the POPIA, and imposed a 5 million administrative fine. So this again reinforces that public sector bodies are also fully accountable under data protection laws and must implement strict privacy controls when handling or publishing personal data. So something that always comes out is, are public institutions exempt? And from the way we are seeing the law being, the laws being implemented or being supervised, we can see that they are not. So you may be asking yourself, so now what next? So yes, there is a digitization, there are the risks, and the risks towards privacy. So how do I then be able to ensure that the risks towards privacy are taken care of? You need to implement a framework, a privacy information management system. Yeah. So your privacy information management system will basically govern how you manage privacy in your organization. It will manage such things as the privacy notices that you have, your contracts with processors, your individual rights and how you have implemented issues like privacy by design and privacy by default. It will assist you with making sure that you have the appropriate records to support that you have the privacy in place. It will assist you to come up with a framework where you can analyze privacy risks, look at data privacy impact assessments, train people, and basically ensure compliance. It is supported in part by the ISO 27001 and the ISO 27701 now has a 2025, basically we now have the 2025 version of the privacy standard, which can be used to help you to implement a privacy standard. So the ISO 27 is a technical standard for privacy and trust. It aligns 27001 security controls with privacy-specific compliance requirements. It helps you to look at the data protection laws, and you can map that to the individual laws in your country. It demonstrates the technical and organizational safeguards and supports sustainable digital growth. And it is a global management standard, which supports international best practices. So now that we've looked at, what's existing now, what are the future challenges that will come up? AI is definitely on the number one on the list. So it increases surveillance, it increases the amount of data, it increases, basically the privacy risks increase. Why? Because we will be trying to use AI to make to offer better service delivery. So then it also increase our risks. Ethical risk will keep growing as we go more and more towards automated decision making. If you look at telemedicine, before, when you would, when a lady was pregnant and let's say the lady and the baby were in distress, the doctors have been taught from an ethical perspective, we need to take care of the living being first. So they will prioritize their decisions on the living being. Yeah. But would a machine do the same? Yeah. So that presents an ethical risk to us. Ethical risks could include such things as biases brought about by this automation that we are pursuing. Yeah, cross-border also comes about as a key risk. So we have, for example, data flowing across borders, and we need to understand. So one, we need to understand where our data lies, what protection mechanisms are in that country, and what protection mechanisms do we have also as an institution? Do we have data processing agreements? Are we able to understand the data flows? So even as it hits institution X, does it then again hit institution Y, something of the sort? There's a need for stronger governance and to balance innovation, privacy, and accountability. So as you've seen, there's a lot of things we can innovate around in Africa. And this enhances our service delivery. But we also must, in our innovation, in our drive for innovation, be thinking about, are these innovations introducing any risk? And are we in a position where we can manage those risks? Have we implemented enough safeguards to manage the privacy risks? There is definitely need for multi-stakeholder collaboration between institutions, the government, and even the data subjects, so as to make sure that things are basically better managed. So with that, it has been about 45 minutes or so of me talking, and we do have one question. So question number one, how do you see the improvement of African legislation in protecting privacy I assume this is in the times of African artificial intelligence. So currently there is no African country which has a regulation which talks about AI, yes, but there are regulations in, so for example, Europe has an AI regulation. And there are a number of countries who have also started to create, for example, an AI strategy. um, Kenya, I think, as well as Rwanda, have started to think about what their strategy for AI is. What I believe is that just the same way that data protection started off, the discussion started off quite a while back, and we now have more. Uh, we have more defined safeguards in terms of data protection. We will find that for AI, people are already beginning to discuss what are the safeguards which are needed, what type of regulation is needed to be able to make AI safe, what kind of safeguards are needed. So I do believe that there will be AI regulation in Africa in the next 5 years. It will probably mirror some of what has already been developed in other developing countries, just the same way that when we had GDPR, if you look at GDPR and you look at most local laws, elements of GDPR have been embedded. Why? Because when you look at AI, when you look at data protection, it's all about ensuring cross-border, that when we are almost at an equal playing field, that whatever rules apply to me also apply to you. The second question we have is, given Africa's unique contents, what measures can be taken to address how sensitive data is defined? In regions like the EU, a full name is typically considered basic personal data, but in many African settings, a name can reveal cultural sensitive information such as tribe, religion, or social background, which may warrant stronger protection. So that's an interesting insight. And I guess it is actually a specific African problem that even right now, I am in another country, but many people will ask me, okay, your name is Stella Simiu. All right, so which tribe do you come from? And they'll be able to say, okay, they are Luyas, they are Luos, they are Kikuyus in Africa. However, what I believe, or rather, for me, my thinking is this: that why probably a name might not. So yes, tribe is an important factor, and it has been a criteria in terms of exclusion in some areas, where it is used to either benefit you, let's say even from a from a job perspective, to be able to make sure that you actually get, a certain job. However, I don't think it might qualify as, let me say, a special category of data. What we just may have to make sure is that, for example, when we are building systems, so we are building, for example, IB systems, we are building systems to vet people for a job, that it takes care of biases that may happen due to someone's name, where they come from, their background, yeah, and that would be now the responsibility, not generally maybe putting it as a special category of data, but making sure that the controls in place are adequate to be able to make sure that we don't bias somebody because they are coming from a certain area. That would be, my thinking around that. Mm-hmm. So question 3 is, does Africa consume more AI technology than it produces? And then what steps can Africa take to ensure that AI systems are not biased against the continent? That is interesting, because yes, those two questions are connected. Does Africa consume more AI technologies than it produces? Right now, I would say, I can't say with certainty, yes, but I do believe it does. Yeah. Um, the only way that Africa can ensure that systems are not biased against it, again, is in how the system is developed. So unfortunately for us, the way in which AI learns is through data that is fed to it. So if the data which is fed to it is mostly from a certain area, and they tend to think in a certain way, then you will find that that AI is biased towards that area. I can remember asking AI to generate for me a picture of executives in a boardroom, and it generated a picture of white people in a boardroom. And I asked AI, no, um, this is my context. I am in Africa. Generate African people in a boardroom. Certain. So the way in which data is fed to these applications and the way in which they are built also affects the biases that these systems have. So if the system learns bias, then that's what it regurgitates. So then they either have to be safeguards of an external person looking at this data that the AI has generated and making sure that it's not biased, or building more, like basically building in more data sets that are African data sets that have been developed by Africa or that are putting more data towards Africa. Okay, question 5. How do collaborations within African countries such as Nigeria and Ghana compare to those within European states? So when it comes to, so I had the pleasure of visiting the supervisory authority, basically in Belgium, just to understand a bit about how the European Union interacts. And we find that there is, so by the nature of, let's say, Facebook is in different countries, and it might have a data protection problem, let's say in Ireland or in Germany or in Italy. So do all those people then go ahead and investigate the same issue? It might be one company that has that issue, but it's affecting all the European states. So there is definitely collaboration, and you might find that one European state will be the investigative authority in that case, and they have certain structures to manage that. Now, around Africa, in terms of, so we do have players who are across Africa. People like Flutterwave are across Africa. People like Cellulant are across Africa, working in the fintech organization. And you might find that their servers either are resident in different countries or are resident in one country and out of that country. Then we have data flowing to all these other countries. So yes, we do actually have cooperation between supervisory authorities where there might be clarifications which are issued. The supervisory authorities do talk to each other. How deep that conversation is, I would not be able to tell you because I don't work in a supervisory authority, but there is collaboration. There is collaboration even in terms of, how the different laws apply, and how data flows across the different countries. Okay, question 6, as data laws across Africa evolve, what should businesses prioritize today to make sure they remain compliant over the next 5 to 10 years without constantly re-engineering their systems? Okay, so if you look at data protection laws, what I tell most organizations that I consult for is not that the data protection laws are there to stifle business. They are there to make sure that you as a business person understand um, understand what data you are asking from individuals. You have appropriate safeguards in place to protect the individual's rights, and you have appropriate, for example, complaints mechanism, incident management in case of an incident. So at a bare minimum, when it comes to data protection, have a policy, document, what are you collecting? Why are you collecting it? What are the principles? What are the rights of individuals as you're collecting that data? And, what are the protection mechanisms in case that data um, were to breach? The second thing that you need to do is you need to make sure people in your organization are aware. Are people aware that there is a data protection law in your country? Are they aware of what the data protection law in your country says? Are they also aware that because, for example, your institution is interacting with country A, B, C, D, you will still be applicable to those data protection rights? So awareness and training is quite important to your different institutions. Then understand your data protection and do a data protection and impact assessment, especially for any high risk processing. So if you're able to understand your high risk processing, and you're able to understand what are the risks around that, then that is the basis of your data protection and privacy program. And finally, unfortunately or fortunately, this thing is not a one-time thing. So you cannot say, I will do this year and be compliant for the next 5 years. It's almost like you have a new child, and every year you have to ensure that that child is an upright individual, is going to school, is being polite to their teachers. So it is a constant, it's a culture change. You have to embed privacy by design, privacy by default principles in your organization. It's not a one-time thing that you will do, and I will do these 5 things and you will be fine forever. You actually have to keep on reviewing your privacy risks, reviewing your controls, how good they are, reviewing who are you sending money to, or rather, who are you, sending data to, and be able to just look at the safeguards around that. So we've had quite an interesting discussion, and it has been such a pleasure to be with you. It is now 4 p.m., unfortunately, where I am. And I will be closing the webinar. Thank you so much for everything. If you want to interact with me, please connect with me via LinkedIn. My LinkedIn name is Stella Simiyu. I'll just put it in the chat, and you can go ahead and connect with me, and we can continue this conversation online. So thank you so much. Have a good afternoon, and a good day to you.